For months, the astronomical community promised us that 3 Atlas would remain nothing more than a dazzling flyby. We were told it was a harmless visitor from interstellar space that would simply graze past Mars before vanishing back into the darkness. But the universe rarely offers harmless without a catch. And now, the James Webb Space Telescope, our sharpest eye in a void, has returned data that completely upends that narrative. The figures have changed. The trajectory has shifted. For the first time, scientists are whispering the reality no one wanted to admit. 3 Atlas might actually hit Mars. This isn't just a story about a comet. It is a story of precision maneuvers, clockwork gas pulses, and an object behaving less like a rock and more like a vessel. As you dive deeper into the data, the conclusion becomes undeniable. 3 Atlas isn't drifting. It is steering, correcting, and targeting. And the red planet is standing directly in its path. Whatever this entity is, it isn't finished with our solar system yet. Let's dive in. When 3 Atlas was first identified on July 1st, it appeared to be a standard interstellar interloper. It was a fast-moving blur with a radiant coma, traveling at nearly 87 kilometers per second relative to the Sun, speeds never before recorded for an inbound object. At that velocity, it could traverse the distance between Earth and the Moon in under 80 minutes. Yet, it wasn't the speed that stunned scientists. It was the behavior. Typically, comets fragment, stabilize, or slow down as they near the inner system. 3 Atlas did the opposite. It began a subtle but consistent acceleration. Even more unsettling, its flight path started to tighten. Small course corrections became visible, and its coma, the halo of dust and gas surrounding it, doubled in luminosity within weeks. Spectral analysis showed intense ultraviolet spikes and CO2 outgassing rates unprecedented for a comet. It was acting less like a drifting chunk of ice and more like a guided missile. That is when Webb's deep field sensors captured the detail that changed everything. Rhythmic pulses were emanating from the tail. These weren't the chaotic jets caused by sunlight melting ice. They were deliberate thrusts occurring at perfect 17-minute intervals. It was a pattern, a signal, a maneuver. As Gemini South, Webb, and NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory continued to track the anomaly, the numbers began to tell a horrifying story. What was once calculated as a near miss had evolved into something far more perilous. The revised impact distance is now a mere 1.95 million kilometers from Mars, a hair's breadth on a cosmic scale. Worse yet, simulations indicate that a mere 10 kilometers per second of added velocity, just a fraction of what is being measured in those gas pulses, could be enough to shift its path into a direct collision. Consider the implications. A mere nudge, a whisper of thrust, and Mars becomes ground zero. Such control is unheard of in natural celestial bodies. It appears as though 3 Atlas is utilizing its own outgassing as microthrusters, adjusting its approach exactly as a spacecraft would. Even more disturbing is that these thrusts are perfectly aligned with the planet's orbital plane. Scientists are no longer just tracking an object, they're watching it take aim. The window for impact is narrowing. Between September 19th and 30th, a single outburst could be the variable that pushes it over the edge. It is no longer just sci-fi enthusiasts or amateur theorists sounding the alarm. Avi Loeb, the Harvard astrophysicist, and his team have published a paper proposing a bold theory. 3 Atlas may be an engineered probe. The data supports them. Radar bounces returned from the Goldstone antennas, and the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter showed metallic echoes rather than the soft, watery signatures typical of comets. NASA insiders have described these reflections as unlike anything previously observed. Add to this the green, needle-like streams visible in high-exposure amateur images. 3 glowing beams converging on Mars, pulsing in sync with the exhaust vents. The picture is becoming undeniable. This object is not behaving naturally. Loeb suggests a scenario where 3 Atlas is deliberately targeting Mars to crash, or perhaps worse, to deliver something. Whether it's probes, signals, or spores, this is no coincidence. Mars is being approached with surgical intent, and humanity is left watching an operation we barely understand unfolding right before our eyes. What happens if it makes contact? The answer is nearly incomprehensible. With an estimated mass of 10 billion tons and a velocity of 57 kilometers per second relative to Mars, an impact would release over 2 million megatons of energy. That is thousands of times more powerful than the largest nuclear detonation in Earth's history. The resulting crater would be 60 kilometers wide and 5 kilometers deep, scattering debris across Martian orbit, some of which could eventually be ejected into interplanetary space and reach Earth. But the fallout goes beyond rock and dust. Mars hosts dozens of scientific assets, orbiters, rovers, and experiments searching for life. An impact wouldn't just destroy machinery. It would wipe out decades of climate records, blind our communication arrays, and potentially ignite contamination events we are wholly unprepared to handle. Roscosmos, ESA, CNSA, and JAXA have all initiated planetary defense discussions, not against an alien fleet, but against a solitary object acting too much like a vehicle. For years, scientists have speculated that Mars harbors life deep beneath its rusty surface. Dormant microbes, subsurface lakes, and ancient ecosystems locked in permafrost. If 3 Atlas strikes, all of that becomes a biological unknown. The extreme heat of impact wouldn't just vaporize the surface. It would fracture the deeper layers of the Martian crust, exposing reservoirs we have never touched. If 3 Atlas carries organic molecules, or worse, synthetic biology embedded in its outgassing trails, the fusion of Earth-independent evolution with Martian biology could trigger genetic contamination on a planetary scale. Some biologists refer to this as reverse panspermia, not life spreading from Mars to Earth, but life being deliberately seeded onto Mars. It raises a terrifying question. What if the goal isn't destruction? What if the object is a delivery system, and Mars is merely the incubator? As 3 Atlas neared its closest point to Mars, the James Webb Telescope locked onto it for a final, ultra-deep scan. The results were classified for 48 hours before a fragment was released to the public. Leaks from inside the project tell a darker tale. NIR spec and MIRI instruments detected traces of synthetic polymers, molecules resembling carbon nanotubes and Earth-made plastics, intermixed with natural gases. These structures do not form in a vacuum or during cometary heating. These are engineered materials. Webb spectrographs also identified persistent isotopic anomalies in hydrogen and carbon that match no known object in our solar system. In short, 3 Atlas contains things that should not exist in space, and it is heading straight for a planet that might still be alive. This data was shared privately with major space agencies. Emergency task forces were convened, not because we could stop it, but because time was running out to identify what it really is. As panic mounted, NASA made a surprising move: silence. The standard press releases ceased. Telemetry feeds from Tian-1 and Perseverance showed gaps. Questions about impact scenarios were deflected. Something had shifted. Then, in a classified transmission leaked by a whistleblower, a phrase appeared: impact protocol initiated. What does that mean? No one is certain, but insiders claim that encrypted signals were sent from Earth-based stations to all functioning equipment on Mars. This is curious, considering there is no known method to intercept or deflect 3 Atlas. Unless, of course, the purpose of those signals wasn't to protect Mars, but to prepare it. If 3 Atlas is an intelligent system, perhaps semi-autonomous, it might react to orbital beacons, energy signatures, or encoded pulses. If Earth just turned those systems on, we may have confirmed that we are listening. Worse, we may have confirmed we are responding. Whatever intelligence is behind this object now knows that we are aware. A team of cryptographers at the SETI Institute attempted something novel. They took the known data points, velocity, trajectory, gravitational vectors, time of closest approach, and translated them into binary. They then applied standard compression algorithms used for deep space messaging. What emerged was not random noise. It was structured and repeating. It contained numerical intervals corresponding to atomic numbers: 6, 8, 14, 26, carbon, oxygen, silicon, iron, the building blocks of both life and machines. Interspersed were prime number countdowns and spacings consistent with recursive messaging protocols. The entire flight path of 3 Atlas may be a signal in motion, a message delivered not through radio, but through behavior, timing, and presence. This implies we aren't simply observing a trajectory. We are witnessing a communicative event. The impact window itself is part of the message. If it strikes, that is a sentence. If it misses, that is another. Either way, the answer is already written in the stars. As the projected path narrowed, planetary scientists noticed a chilling coincidence. The updated trajectory crosses a narrow corridor directly above Elysium Planitia, a geologically young region of Mars known for symmetrical surface features. Satellite imagery revealed concentric ridges and spiral flows that eerily mimic Fibonacci patterns. But what caught everyone's attention was that the exact vector of 3 Atlas's descent aligns with a central depression, a perfectly circular basin less than 3.5 kilometers wide. Centered perfectly within this basin is a deposit of crystalline silicates with refractive properties found nowhere else on Mars. When hit by solar radiation, they emit brief pulses of infrared light at regular intervals. Previously dismissed as a geological curiosity, scientists are now asking, was this basin a random feature or a beacon, a rendezvous point? And if so, who input the coordinates? Just as James Webb locked back on a 3 Atlas, an unexpected anomaly appeared. Trailing the main body at a consistent 7 cents, not physically attached but shadowing it, was a secondary object. It wasn't gas, nor was it a debris field. It was something darker. Radar couldn't detect it. Infrared couldn't warm it. But photometric analysis showed a sharp drop in light moving in unison with 3 Atlas, as if tethered by an invisible force. This shadow maintained an exact distance, unperturbed by acceleration or gravity. When visualized in polar coordinates, it formed a perfect orbital trace. Something was following 3 Atlas. Not hurting, not escorting, but mirroring. Speculation exploded. Was it a drone? A secondary object? A gravitational echo? Or something else entirely? A field? A memory? A protocol? For the first time, researchers considered that 3 Atlas might not be the main actor, but simply the carrier for something more elusive. With all eyes on the impact date, an even more unsettling pattern emerged. When a trajectory was laid out against the object's closest approaches to Earth, the Sun, and Mars, scientists found that each alignment fell on astronomical resonance dates, key orbital harmonics studied by ancient civilizations. September 23rd, October 5th, November 11th. These dates match rare gravitational synchronizations that occur in 54-year cycles. The last time the inner planets were in similar orbital positions during a comet's passage was the Tunguska event in 1908. This synchronicity sent shockwaves through the scientific community. How could a random interstellar object arrive at such astronomically significant moments? Unless it wasn't random. Unless it was timing itself to a clock not built by human hands. Patterns in space are always the signature of design. One final revelation pushed the conversation into a realm once considered taboo. A neurocosmology team at Princeton noticed that when subjects were exposed to the pulsation frequencies of 3 Atlas, specifically the 17-minute gas vent intervals, their brainwave activity synchronized. This occurred across multiple subjects in different rooms, isolated and unaware. This is not just resonance. This is neurological entrainment. It suggests the signal is not only mechanical but cognitive. If it can affect us from millions of kilometers away, what is its origin? Is it possible that 3 Atlas is not a rock or a spacecraft, but a thought moving through the universe? A seed of awareness? A message you don't read but feel? If true, the physical impact on Mars may be just a symptom. The real event might already be happening inside us. As fears escalated, Archaeoastronomers began cross-referencing the trajectory with ancient sky maps, Babylonian, Mayan, and Tibetan cosmology scrolls. They found a pattern known as the flame serpent, describing a celestial body descending from the outer dark, curving unnaturally near the sun, and aiming for the red god, Mars. A pre-Incan calendar stone from Tiwanaku even depicted 4 radiating lines from Mars following the comet's descent. When processed through photogrammetry, these lines matched the projected debris dispersion pattern of a 3-Atlas impact. This suggests someone saw this coming thousands of years ago. It implies 3-Atlas isn't just passing through history. It might be history repeating itself. Mars may not be the target. It may be the trigger. Then, the impossible happened. The ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter detected a spike in xenon isotopes in the upper Martian atmosphere. The composition was wrong for solar radiation. It was rising from below, specifically from deep fissures near Cerberus Fossae. Seismic activity spiked. Subsurface temperatures rose by 3 Kelvin. And in a stunning twist, magnetometers detected a weak, structured magnetic pulse repeating every 17 minutes, the exact interval of 3-Atlas's emissions. This was no longer a question of if the object would impact. It became a question of whether Mars was preparing for it. It was as if the planet wasn't being threatened but activated. Something dormant inside the crust had begun to stir. As the final hours ticked down, the concept of impact shifted from a physical event to a temporal one. The light fluctuations from 3-Atlas began to follow a recursive, layered timing sequence that created a Fibonacci-based spiral when graphed. Mathematicians hypothesized that 3-Atlas is transmitting time, not in seconds, but in cycles, epochs. The object is synchronizing. The countdown isn't to an explosion, it is to resonance, a convergence of consciousness, orbit, and energy. In the final 72 hours, a low-frequency infrasonic signal was detected originating from under Olympus Mons. It wasn't coming from space, it was coming from the volcano itself. The signal formed a spiral spectrogram that mirrored the waveform emitted by 3-Atlas. The scientific community fell silent. Is Olympus Mons echoing or communicating? Has Mars been waiting for this moment? And if this is Mars waking up, what happens when it opens its eyes? High-resolution imagery from Mars Express then captured movement south of Noctis Labyrinthus. 2 perfect concentric ovals expanded outward in the dust, forming an unmistakable image. An eye tilted exactly 23.5 degrees, Earth's axial tilt. Mars had physically blinked. Something beneath the surface was aware of us, of our geometry, and of our signal. In the final readings, Webb detected a molecular trail containing repeating strands of nuclear-based sequences similar to RNA. This wasn't passive dust. It was a living code engineered to transmit through space. Life not as cells, but as language. As 3-Atlas entered its final arc, the Global Astronomy Network mapped one last alignment. The Sun, Earth, and Mars would form a perfect straight line, with 3-Atlas intersecting the axis at the precise moment of solar transit. This matched ancient megalithic alignments at Stonehenge and Teotihuacan. For millennia, humans have built monuments to this configuration. Now, the alignment is repeating as mechanism, not myth. Mars, the red witness. Earth, the awakened observer. The Sun, the eternal source. And 3-Atlas, the keystone falling into the lock of planetary memory. The final position isn't about destruction. It's about completion. We looked at the sky and saw a rogue rock. We called it 3-Atlas. But what James Webb revealed was ritual, not randomness. This object performed. It aligned. It responded. And Mars whispered back. Signals, codes, pulses. It is as if this moment was scripted into the dust of the craters and the bones of the planets. Mars might be the stage, but we're the audience. And we were never meant to be passive. Every telescope, every signal, every theory, it was all heard. The final impact may not leave a crater, but it has already begun to reshape what we know about life and ourselves. 3 Atlas didn't come from Mars. It came for our attention. And now that it has it, we must ask, what happens next? I'd love to hear what you think about this, so drop a comment below. If you enjoyed our conversation today, please share this video and subscribe to help the channel grow. Every bit of support counts.